Rick Davies, the quiet architect of Supertramp, has passed away at the age of 81. News of his death spread quickly, and for millions of fans it felt like the closing of an era. His baritone voice, steady, earthy, and unforgettable, once carried anthems like Goodbye Stranger and Bloody Well Right. Today, those songs drift through radios and playlists, no longer fresh on stage but etched forever in memory. To understand his power, one must remember the balance he created with Roger Hodgson. Hodgson's high, ethereal tenor soared with whimsy, while Davies grounded the music with blues-tinged grit. Together they formed one of the most striking duos in rock history. A partnership that turned Breakfast in America into a phenomenon and gave Supertramp its timeless sound. Their voices were opposite, yet together they became inseparable, like light and shadow within the same melody. And yet, behind the music stood a man few truly knew. Reserved, private, and far from the spotlight, Davies left behind more questions than answers. What was it about this quiet figure that allowed his voice to echo louder than fame itself, long after the lights dimmed? Richard Davies was born on July 22, 1944, in Swindon, England, into a modest working-class household. His father cut hair by trade and sailed the seas as a merchant seaman, leaving young Rick to grow up with a sense of both discipline and independence. From an early age, music became his escape. He first picked up the drums, pounding out rhythms that echoed the raw energy of youth, but soon he turned to the piano, discovering an instrument that allowed him not just to play, but to express himself. By his teenage years, he was already part of local bands, joining Vince and the Vigilantes in 1959 before forming his own group, Rick's Blues, in 1962. These early experiences sharpened his ear and his ambition. He was not a flamboyant performer, rather he carried a quiet determination, a sense that his future would be built note by note. In 1969, a single newspaper ad he placed in search of fellow musicians changed everything. It brought him face to face with Roger Hodgson, a young guitarist from a very different world, and together they would soon light the first spark of Supertramp. When Rick Davies and Roger Hodgson joined forces, the chemistry was undeniable. Their voices could not have been more different. Hodgson's high, ethereal tenor seemed to float in the clouds, while Davies's baritone grounded every song with grit and weight. That contrast became the secret formula of Supertramp. The band's first two albums struggled to find an audience, but perseverance paid off. In 1974, they released Crime of the Century, a breakthrough that gave the world Dreamer and Bloody Well Right. For the first time, the world began to hear the power of Davies and Hodgson side by side. Critics praised their unique blend of progressive rock and pop sensibility, while fans connected with the emotional honesty of the lyrics. The momentum only grew. Even in the quietest moments in 1977 introduced Give a Little Bit, a song that would become an anthem of generosity and hope. Then, in 1979, Supertramp reached their pinnacle with Breakfast in America. Featuring the logical song, Take the Long Way Home, and Davies' unforgettable Goodbye Stranger, the album sold millions worldwide and won 2 Grammys. Supertramp was no longer just a band. They had become the voice of a generation. Away from the stage and the spotlight, Rick Davies lived a life far quieter than his fame suggested. In 1977, he married Sue, a woman who would become not only his life partner, but also the steady force behind his career. Unlike many rock stars whose marriages crumbled under the weight of touring and temptation, Rick's bond with Sue endured. She eventually stepped in as the band's manager in 1984, guiding Supertramp through turbulent years with a mix of loyalty and resilience. Their relationship offered Davies something he rarely found in the public eye: stability. While Roger Hodgson pursued a more visible path after leaving the band, Rick preferred to retreat from interviews, leaving Sue to handle the business while he focused solely on music. They built a partnership that blurred the lines between personal and professional, a marriage grounded not in spectacle but in shared commitment. Though little is publicly known about their private life, one truth was clear. Sue's presence shielded Rick from the harsher demands of the industry. Behind every song, every tour, there was a quiet foundation of trust and companionship that carried him through both triumph and adversity. The harmony that had once defined Supertramp could not last forever. By 1983, creative differences between Rick Davies and Roger Hodgson had reached a breaking point. Hodgson left the band to pursue his own path, leaving Davies as the sole captain of a ship that had once sailed on shared vision. For fans, it marked the end of an era. The two men, once partners in genius, were now divided by pride, perspective, and pain. Davies carried on with Supertramp, releasing albums like Brother Where You Bound in 1985, proving he could still lead with ambition and artistry. Yet the shadow of Hodgson lingered. Fans often compared the two lineups, wondering aloud if Supertramp could ever recapture its magic without both voices entwined. Worse still, the split birthed decades of legal battles. Songwriting credits and royalty rights became points of bitter contention, dragging the former bandmates into courtrooms long after their music had united millions. Even as the years passed, their feud resurfaced, most recently in 2025, when a US judge ruled on disputed royalties. The brilliance of their collaboration remained undeniable, but the scars of conflict never healed. By the mid-2010s, fans dared to hope for one last miracle, a reunion tour that would bring Rick Davies and Supertramp back to the stage together. Plans were underway, the set lists imagined, the tickets nearly ready to sell. But in 2015, everything stopped. Davies was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, a rare and aggressive cancer of the plasma cells. The tour was cancelled, and the quiet man who had once stood at the heart of stadiums retreated into silence. The news shook fans worldwide. How could the voice behind Goodbye Stranger and Crime of the Century now face such a merciless battle? Yet even in illness, Davies showed the resilience that had defined his music. Friends and bandmates recalled his courage, his refusal to be consumed by despair. For the next decade, he lived privately, away from the cameras, cherishing time with his wife Sue and those closest to him. Each year he survived was seen as a small victory, but the absence of his presence on stage left a void. The man who once filled arenas with sound was now teaching the world a quieter lesson, how to fight with dignity. Rick Davies may have left the stage, but his voice continues to resonate across generations. Songs like Goodbye Stranger, Bloody Well Right, and Crime of the Century are not just staples of classic rock radio. They are cultural touchstones, woven into films, television, and the memories of millions who grew up with their melodies. His baritone, steady and reflective, offered a counterpoint to the soaring optimism of Roger Hodgson, and together they built a catalogue that remains timeless. Even after Hodgson's departure, Davies kept Supertramp alive, touring with new lineups and carrying the flame of their music. Fans who attended those later concerts recall his presence as calm but commanding, a reminder that he was more than half of a duo. He was the foundation that held the sound together. Beyond the charts and the awards, Davies' influence lies in his ability to merge introspection with accessibility. He wrote about alienation, freedom, and the quiet struggles of life, giving voice to emotions many listeners could not articulate themselves. That gift ensured his work would endure long after his passing. Rick Davies' songs remain immortal, a soundtrack to both youth and memory. Rick Davies' journey reminds us that greatness does not always shout, it often whispers. He was never the flamboyant frontman, never the tabloid headline, yet his music reached deeper than spectacle. With his baritone voice and his steadfast presence, he gave the world songs that spoke of resilience, freedom, and the quiet weight of time. Now, with his passing at 81, we are left to reflect on what it means to leave a legacy that outlives the man himself. Behind the platinum records and Grammy Awards was a life lived simply, faithfully, and with integrity. Supported by Sue, his wife and partner of nearly 5 decades, Davies found in love what he rarely sought in fame: stability, loyalty, and trust. His story is both triumphant and tragic. A man who carried millions with his music, yet spent his final years in silence, away from the world that once cheered his name. Perhaps that is the lesson Rick Davies leaves us with, that true impact lies not in noise but in endurance. His voice will never be forgotten. Do you remember your first time hearing a Supertramp song? Share your memory below and let his music live on through us all.